Hey, can y'all hear us?
The audio is coming through slightly right now, but there is an echoing effect.
Yeah, I have my laptop on. How about now, Justin?
Can you test that one more time, please? At the moment, there is not an echo. I'm not hearing anything come through. Can you try it one more time?
What about now?
I can hear you now without an echo, but it is pretty distant.
Better? How about now?
It's pretty, I can hear you. It's pretty muffled and pretty distant. Do we have anything covering the hardware of the owl?
No.
No. It's a clear path, I guess. I don't know how.
Tia, the audio is coming through. If you would like to continue the meeting, it's just going to be pretty low.
Yell.
We'll just have to project. Everybody lay on the table.
Get as close as possible.
We get to use our teacher voices. That's right.
The volume is now fluctuating, so it's possible it's a hardware problem, but it is coming through nonetheless at the moment.
So they're missing the original owl in here, which is MIA, and so we're trying to find back about.
Okay, so I'll speak up and if you can hear me. So the next item we have on here is Roman numeral 4, donation. This will require a motion to vote. So it is the consideration of an action on the recommendation for the acceptance of the land donation from the George Foundation for 125.753 acres of Brazos River floodway property to the city manager. So Mr. Joe Tesher will be presenting, so Director of Parks and Rec.
Good evening, everyone. There's a property that's owned by the George Foundation that lies in the Brazos River corridor next to a lot of the parkland we have. So that's just kind of the introduction into it. And so hopefully you can see this fairly well, and I will try to describe it. That's right. Okay. So, okay, great. So what you're looking at here, this is a graphic of kind of the Brazos River corridor as it runs through the city of Sugar Land. You've got US Highway 59 right here, and then this is Grand Parkway up here. So the University of Houston campus is here, Smart Financial's here. As you come into, this is Commonwealth coming into Memorial Park right down here. So everybody's oriented. And then as you go down the river, this right here is primarily Brazos River Park and Memorial Park, where everything's developed right now. And so as you go down river, the city owns, this is Memorial and Brindley Trail here. And so the city also owns some property here in this area, which is, we've referred to it as the Brazos Landing area because it's adjacent to the Brazos Landing subdivision development off of Elkins Road. If you know where Elkins Road dead ends at the levee, it's just across there. So the city owns that property. And we don't own all of it, but I'll show that in a little more detail here in a minute. But the property that we're looking at is right here, 125 acres. And you can see the green is what we own here, and then green that the city owns here from Riverstone. So this is the property that we're talking about. So the city did a master plan of the whole floodway of the Brazos River, gosh, back when I kind of first started here. And so we have 9 miles of the river runs through Sugar Land, and the floodway, which is, the flood zone area on either side of the river, is approximately 3,600 acres. And that's the whole thing on both sides. And over the years, we've been acquiring property along the Brazos River. Generally, it comes through what we call parkland dedication. So the developers that develop adjacent to the river, they deed their land over to the river, because being floodway, you really can't build any kind of residential or commercial development. It's primarily just for accepting floodwaters and allowing the water to flow through. It's perfect for parks because parks are very low impact. We don't do a lot of development in it. Anything there are no habitable structures that go into the floodway. So, so it's primarily left as green space. So it's great for parks. So that's kind of the 9 miles and the 3,600 acres. And right now, the city owns approximately 1,200 acres of what you see in the green. And it's not all continuous. We have some on both sides, as well as both sides of Highway 59. So, so the goal is to try to link all that together and acquire as many properties along the river as we can, knowing that ultimately, long-term, we'll probably even be looking south of the Brazos River too later on and really undeveloped areas of the city, although they are still in the city limits down there. So in 2018, when the master plan was done, there was a number of goals included in the master plan. And so, things like continue to pursue the land acquisition along the Brazos was one of the key elements of the master plan when we voted and adopted that master plan. Also, this all along the river gives us opportunities to add to the bike and pedestrian access all along the river to the adjacent neighborhoods. It also provides some environmental protection to areas. We keep most of it as preserve or conservation land. And then also, of course, it being floodway minimizes the potential for flooding in the surrounding areas. And kind of ultimately, we see the whole Brazos River corridor be continuing to come an even bigger and bigger kind of destination facility, especially, we've got active recreation going on now, but we have a lot of opportunity for passive recreation too, for birding and just hiking and things like that along the river. Kind of eco-tourism type of activity. So you see here, it's a little bit more of an enlargement of that particular property. And so the property we're looking at is this, that's got the number 2 here on it, which is interesting property, because this was the inside of the property was formed by an oxbow. The route of the river used to come like this and circle around like that. And so I found out that the George Foundation, the owners, actually dynamited the river to way back when to open up the flow here of the river. And they told us that, but they don't really know exactly why they did it. They did it to increase the flow of the river. And maybe the thinking was it would make their piece of property more valuable.
I think the
Brazos
at one time was for commercial, because it does go all the way to the Gulf.
Yeah.
So that might have been.
Might have been the case. And these oxbow areas are pretty common, and where it runs through Sugar Land is fairly straight, but if you go just a little downstream into kind of where it touches Missouri City, it becomes very meandering with a lot more potential oxbows. But as you can see, the number ones are the various tracts that are city-owned property, primarily parks-owned property. This is what I was referring to as the Brazos Landing area here, and then this is Riverstone property here. And then we also own a tract here. Right here it's a commercial owned property. It's gas. It's like a gas pipelines come in here, and I think they transfer, they turn and go different directions there. And there's also a cell tower located, a pretty tall cell tower located in here on this commercial property. And we would not be acquiring that. That would stay as it is. But this is Elkins Road where it comes across, and we, the city, own the immediate land right on the other side. So we would continue to give access to the property owner here, but we own this piece of property on either side here. And so what this would do by acquiring this piece of property here would give us the completed property from here all the way down to the end of our city limits lines, which are in Riverstone. So that would add another 125 acres to our roughly 1,200 acres that we have right now along the Brazos River. And you can see this property is still, they don't have any cattle or crops on it, but they do bale hay off of it. That's another property owner. We'd probably like to try to acquire it one day. And over the years, we have approached that property owner, but they weren't interested in selling that property at this time. So we still own this one here, and we have connections along the levee to here. So we still have a fairly continuous access to the land there. So the value of that property is roughly 94,000, and that seems kind of low for property in Sugarland,
Yeah.
but it's because of its floodway.
Yeah.
Being floodway property, it really doesn't have a very high value because of.
Have y'all done the deal already?
No.
So I can call them up and offer them 100.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
No.
That's fantastic.
Yes, yeah.
That's fantastic.
So, we've had our eye on this property for a really long time, and so the opportunity to communicate with the George Foundation came up, and so this one's really kind of off the beaten path for them, because most of all their property is down where the George Ranch is, further down in Richmond, Rosenberg. So this one, it's kind of an outlier for them. And William and I had a chance to get out on a four-wheeler with their land manager for George Foundation. He took us around the property and showed us around, and he kind of just filled us in on some of the background on it. So that was a good connection there tonight. So this is the graphic version of our master plan for the whole 9-mile corridor. As you can see, it starts way back here by New Territory, comes all the way past Belfair, University of Houston, on down to Riverstone here. So we identified this tract as a potential target land acquisition way back many years when this plan was originally done. And it's a really beautiful piece of property, a lot of big trees on it. There is one pipeline that cuts across it, but actually the pipeline, you don't really know it's there other than they mow it occasionally, but it does provide some kind of nice sight lines down through the site, and it helps with access, an access point into the property. And George Foundation, along that easement, they had developed a kind of a loop. It's not paved or it's not a road or anything. It's just something that they would come in and mow occasionally, a kind of a loop drive that would go loop, just kind of loop to the site in here. Then you get access from it from about right here. So our plan is not to come in and do any kind of clearing or any high level development here. What we would anticipate doing is where we have the crossing at Elkins Road, do some more, probably if we do another trailhead type development there, a little bit of parking, probably a picnic pavilion, maybe a restroom someday, similar to what we have there at Memorial Park. People could get in and get access to it, and then come in and hike and bike in this particular area.
Can I ask a question?
Go ahead.
Are they being George Foundation, are they gonna have some stipulations look like the other foundations where in other words, it could be a natural, Cullinan Park?
No, it doesn't have near the deed restrictions on it as like Cullinan Park does. The only thing they're really asking is that we do have it open and maintain, or we have it open for use and activity within 10 years. And that's the main stipulation. And then as long as it remains park purposes, like we couldn't try to develop, something non-park related on it. So the stipulations are very minimal.
But do you foresee that it will remain, it looks wooded?
It's very wooded, yes.
Okay, do you foresee that it'll remain wooded? I mean,
Yes.
it's not gonna be opened up for soccer fields or
Correct.
something? Okay.
No, it would-
And then the other thing is where that oxbow was, is there a trail or is it a ditch or what is there now?
Well, on the. No, that doesn't.
Yeah, that's it a little bit,
A little bit.
yeah.
This is, okay, on the east side of it, let me go back a slide or two. Okay, on the east side over here. On the east side, thank you for that. On the east side over here is very much kind of like a lake. It probably dries out occasionally during drought times, but it stays pretty wet most of the time. A lot of birds, a lot of aquatic bird life in that area that we've seen. And now the oxbow used, like where it used to come in here and then loop around here. This is really the wet side over here, and this side stays fairly dry. Their land manager told us that, you know, during like a Hurricane Harvey or something, most of this will still stay fairly out of the water. But the old channel that would be right here on this side would get very wide. So at times you will have water all the way around it. So our thought is that probably when we go in here, we'll have to elevate some sort of boardwalk or something. You can get across it right now. And actually in this view, you can kind of see where that gas pipeline cuts right through there. See that line? That's where the gas pipeline is. And the main entry was just really close to that. Like there's kind of a little drive that cuts through here. There was a big tree down on it, so we had to kind of forge our way around it. But so kind of to answer your question, most of the time it's pretty dry on that side, but the east side stays kind of like a lake. And we probably at some point would need to boardwalk or bridge across it to be able to get to our other properties down here. But as you can see, it's not super wide down in that area. So I think a boardwalk or some type of bridge would be able to handle that easy enough to link those two. Yes.
I've got a follow-up question. Considering it is pretty wet on the east side and it sounds pretty wild, how easy is it to put trails in there, do you think?
There's actually some bike trails already in there. And some hiking trails. It's minimal, but there are some people getting in there.
Yeah, look, once you get past the low water area, the old Oxbow, the old River Channel, it goes
It's
really
high.
high
It's
elevation.
surprising how much,
Surprisingly non-flat.
yeah.
Surprisingly,
So,
very high and
You
dry.
kind of have some terraces in there, and as you get to this side, it actually from this oxbow here, it stays kind of flat for a little ways, and then it slopes up very, very visibly. You know, for our area here to see that kind of slope is kind of unusual, you know?
has there been an environmental?
No, we haven't done any,
Okay.
we haven't done anything, and given the fact that George hasn't ever had any plans here, I doubt that they've done anything. Before we do before we do anything, we will have to do we'll have to do archaeology, we'll have to do wetlands,
Yeah.
we'll have to do all the
That's what I'm
studies.
getting at. The wetlands will be, it's probably more prominent in the wetlands, the wet area.
There will
We
certainly
kind
be,
of did a little bit of wetland mapping. We were more doing internal study.
Yeah.
The northern side has quite some wetland area, and then the lake. And then we'll also look at the elevation and the soil. When we have to enhance this area, we'll have to hire a consultant to do the studies.
Interesting.
I have a couple of questions. Is the entire acreage, 125 acres, in the floodway or just a portion of it?
it's all in the floodway. But floodway property, kind of what we've learned over the years in the work that we've done there, it fluctuates quite a bit. I mean, you've got, even during Hurricane Harvey was a great example of, like, there's some areas out there that are just naturally higher in elevation than other areas, and so you've got some sort of terraces there. So you can kind of see exactly where those elevation lines come up, and you know, sometimes like at Brazos River Park where the pavilion and everything is, it'll look totally dry, but if you go down a little closer to the river, when the river's up, you can see how far up into the trees the river is. But yet the parking lot, the restroom, everything else is high and dry, and this site will be very similar to that. It'll have areas that'll be up pretty far out of the floodway, probably, or flood, even at flood stage, it'll probably still be up some.
So you guys looked at the site, are you anticipating any, like, additional maintenance costs to your annual
Yeah,
maintenance?
and like any park, that we develop, we will have to increase our maintenance.
Well, probably not until we really develop
Not,
everything.
sorry, yeah.
Like right now, I mean,
besides
we, like in River,
Sorry.
like right now in Riverstone, we've owned that land for, gosh, 10 years
We-
or so, and we, you
Yeah,
know, we
I
go
have
down
to
there and
say,
check
when we
on it.
develop it, we'll have to increase our maintenance. I don't predict that getting this parcel now will increase our maintenance.
At all?
Not anytime soon, until it'll go
Until we
through,
start
it'll go
developing.
through, it'll go through a, you know, the design process, and whenever we do a design or do any sort of improvement, we factor in those maintenance costs.
It's heavily,
Before design, you guys aren't planning to do
No,
anything?
it's heavily wooded. I don't predict the need to need any mowing. I don't see any really need to really get in there and do anything until we open it up for people. And right now, it's not accessible right now to people right now. I mean, they're getting in there somehow. We don't really know how, maybe to do some bike riding, but it's not really. Oh, there's no open gates or open trails leading into this area at all.
And it appears to be pretty minimal.
Would the city be required to maintain that gas strip, mow
No,
strip, or?
No,
someone else does that?
the companies, they come in and mow
So, yeah, so
Yeah.
there's really no maintenance at all, really.
I can't think of anything.
So, you said people are getting in, is it fenced?
them. It is fenced,
It
actually,
is.
especially along,
The levee is got a hog fence that I could get over if I really wanted to, but it's not easily.
That's all.
It's a mesh fence. I think it was put up by the levee to keep hogs out of their levee and out of the
Generally.
neighborhoods.
a lot of the levees around here have been putting hog fence around it, because of, you know, the hogs come up
We
and tear
went through a
people's yards
locked
up.
gate to get
Yeah.
in.
Right.
We went through a locked gate to get in. We had the combination. And then when we drove in, we went through another gate. There was another gate that the George Foundation installed at the start of their property, just off of our property, right, where his cursor is.
Okay,
Right in there.
So it's not accessible, very accessible unless you really want to
Is
get there.
a tax impact or anything?
We don't know of any,
Oh, you mean like a property tax?
Yeah. that
No,
the city
no,
would
we
have to
won't,
pay
we
on
wouldn't
that.
pay property tax.
good question.
I mean, we looked at the property tax, and because of the floodway and it's fairly low value, their property tax was like practically nothing. I was like, I would love to have that property tax.
the woods were phenomenal. I thought, you know, in any case, and I thought they were, and I think there was some of our best woods that we have in our park system. I mean, I would say far cry less like hackberries and tallows and more pecans, cottonwoods, sycamores, oaks.
That's good.
There was some other stuff in there too, don't get me wrong. But it's been undisturbed for so long, y'all. Trees are not small. They're quite large, and they've shaded out a lot of the understory. It's actually quite,
Pretty fun.
I kept saying, oh, Joe, look at that tree, look at that. I was like, I saw some big pecan trees in there, big pecan trees.
I
So
bet there's some good nesting birds in there.
it was quite enjoyment to me and Joe spent a couple hours riding the gator around. It was like really pleasant.
Yeah, that's cool.
So these were these are some views of the lake area. That they're on that east side. And you can see this is kind of flatter, and this is at the lower elevations of it.
So
And
looking east on that.
you're correct. So like across the view would be the Riverstone side.
Okay.
There,
Very cool.
but yeah.
Any final questions, comments? So with that said, may I get a motion? Heather, thank you. Second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Tracy. Very much.
Very cool.
So with that said, so if I may get A vote on this. So voting for consideration, really the acceptance of the land donation from George Foundation. So all four, raise your hand. If we have unanimous decision on that, voting, and then against. So thank you very much. This has been approved.
Great,
for
thank you.
Consideration and approval. Thank you. So last item on here is the director's report. So Mr. Joe Cheshire will be presenting on the topics.
So that was, okay, you did the vote on the recommendation, great, okay. So, okay, here's the director's report. All right, had a busy period as usual. And so one of the big things that the city does is we rely a lot on volunteers to do a lot of different things. And it's not just Parks and Recreation, but it's a lot of different departments. So we always recognize at city council once a year, volunteers of the year for the various departments in the city. And we've always been, Parks has always been, people like to volunteer and do stuff in parks. So we usually have some really great volunteers to help us out. So we have 3 of our different divisions nominated. It's a pretty, it's a nomination process, and you go through and you nominate your volunteers, and then they're selected through our community outreach department, and they're selected. And so then they're recognized at a kind of a reception and then at city council. So we ended up with 3. Paula, do you want to tell us about your volunteer that you nominated since you're here?
Yeah, so King, he's a junior at a Clement High School. He has been volunteer for the Parks Development Division for about 1 to 2 years. I think he volunteered about 160 hours in total. As a student at Clement High, it's pretty impressive. And the work he has been done is helping with the maintenance of the butterfly garden. And whenever in the fall or early spring, we want to do the wildflower seeding, he's always the first to sign up. He also attended the annual tree planting event every year. And he sometimes even kind of volunteered to plant some like small trees and then go there and take care of them, water them, to help them to get established. And on top of that, he actually very actively recruited more high school students to go with them. And he patiently explained to them how to sign up, how to put their hours in, how to get their ES form signed. So he even created a cheat sheet for everybody to go through all the steps and how to sign up and how to work with the city to be the volunteer. So it's very he's very quiet. He does not talk much, but he really does a lot. And then, that's King.
Thank you. Cool. Thanks. And then in the middle is Ricky Rayborn. He volunteers a lot for our special events. And so Brianna Williams nominated him, and she's on the left, and Liz Abraham is our other one of our other staff members for special events, and she's one of our part-time staff members. And so they nominated him, and so he's a real bubbly, fun guy. He's great for events, so always ready to pitch in and help. So we appreciate him. And then for the senior center, we have Dennis Matley, and he's nominated, and that's Sandy Pinman, who's with our T.E. Harmon Senior Center, nominated him. So we again, volunteers are critical to the senior center, senior program. They just help out so much, and they put on programs and entertain the seniors. So it's good to see us. Parks had the most volunteers, so we had three recognized from 3 different divisions. So that was really nice to have that. And then if you haven't been out at the butterfly garden or along the new road at Brazos River Park, we'll bring the flowers to y'all, so you can enjoy it. It's really, the pictures here are good, but they don't do it justice really how it looked probably the last. They're starting to fade a bit now, but the variety of wildflowers out there was really great. And the bluebonnets they're starting to expand more and more. You're getting pockets of them here and there, and so I think one of these days the pockets will connect to each other, and we'll have even bigger, better wildflowers. The black-eyed Susans have been, I don't know, the weather must have been just right for them this year, because they all up and down the road, and then, tell me what is the more pinkish one?
Oh, that's the wine cup.
Okay.
Annual wine cup.
Annual
Okay.
wine cup. And then we also have a type, it's kind of mellow, sort of looks the wine cup, but also.
So there's
better.
annual wine cup, which is the upright one, and then there's the prostrate perennial wine cup, which has a whole bunch of common names, like poppy melon.
Yeah,
It's,
yeah, and then the white, the yellow, yellow.
Yeah.
Yellow, I'm sorry, yes. And then bee balms and, yeah, lots of.
Bee balms,
things
I love bee
come
balms.
up, yeah.
So most of them are native. There's a few, I think, that are non-native that are in our seed mixes, but it's mostly native for pollinators. So, yeah, we've been working on it, especially Pullman and volunteers have been working on it for what, 2 or 3 years now. So we're really starting to see, it's nice each year you start to see the work paying off more and more.
It
I mean,
looks
it's
beautiful.
not
It's
just,
so nice.
it takes a little help to get Mother Nature to kind of get it. Mother Nature does some, but we kind of have to help her along with that, so.
Will they reseed, each one of those
So
reseed?
yeah, that's the goal, is to definitely let them seed out and then we'll mow. We mow
Okay,
about, with the tractor, about 3 times a year. We're realizing that the invasives choke out the wildflowers. So we do seed, try to seed in all, we call Schedule F mowing, where our contractor mows about 2 to 3 times a year. But we will not mow until they seed out. And so Pullman helps me keep an eye on it. We talk to our park superintendent Jorge and communicate with him, and we make sure that they've seeded out and dropped before we mow.
cool.
So we'll probably mow right before July 4th is typically when we'll mow.
Very
I
cool.
think them following that schedule is what's helped them,
Mhm.
really expand
We
year
are
to year.
experimented in Pullman all kinds of different ways.
Yeah.
Seeded in some no-mow areas, and we're not very impressed with the results. Me and
Mhm.
Pullman just talked about that a couple weeks ago. And so we're really trying to hone in on how we seed.
And how
We
you
started
know.
mixing compost with our seeding,
Mhm.
Pullman and the
Yeah.
volunteers. We hand dig if we can. We've done some broadcasting, but we started experimenting with like hydrochain, which is like a water absorptioner. It conditions the soil and helps retain water. And then we've played a lot around with the last couple of years with some mixing the seed with compost. It helps keep the seed moist and it actually helps fertilize a little bit. So we played around with it a lot.
The majority seeds were donated by Keep Sugar and Beautiful. And sometimes we get grants from like Houston Wilderness or other organization or Centerpoint grant.
Nice.
And then sometimes William is able to allocate some like minimal money. We can just buy more seeds. So
What I think was the number one thing is the donations, obviously being able to get the seeds in the quantity that you need. But I think the number 2 thing, and I think Pullman would agree with me on this, is we seeded the road right after construction, before the weeds had a chance to get established. And I think we're finally seeing the results of seeding on bare soil. Before construction, before the weeds had a chance to get established.
And did you just broadcast?
We did different methods along the road, different
Yeah.
And
methods.
what quantity did you need to do that?
well, basically, when you buy the seeds, there's a density sort of recommendation from the nursery, like the place they sell the seeds. And then typically we try to make it denser. We try to add more than what they ask for, so you're able to.
Olin, what's our average? We're putting in about 100 pounds a year, give or take?
80 to 100 pounds a year.
And we sow areas at least twice. We don't just sow an area once, we've typically
Yeah.
done it at least twice in a row.
They don't all germinate and a lot of animals eat the seed.
Yeah, right.
You kind of need to reseeding
Yeah.
and
You don't
keep
press
up
it
with
in.
the right mowing. And then hopefully hope for the good weather, rain and water.
Our goal is to make Raspberry Park not only like a mountain bike, go wave and pump track destination, but a destination for wildflowers. And of course, this benefit is pollinators,
Yeah.
butterflies,
Butterflies. and
hummingbirds.
Yeah.
Well, you all probably know that we also kind of sign up for the mayor's pledge for monarch butterflies, that program. So every year we finish a report on that platform. So this is always part of the project we report to.
Yeah. Brilliant thought. Do you guys ever spray for pesticides anywhere and do you avoid these areas?
We rarely ever spray pesticides. I just don't have it in my budget.
Good.
And we try to manage pests at different methods.
Very good.
Awesome.
Are we ever considering a bird sanctuary too?
I don't know that we've really,
Well,
But-
Culligan
Cullinan
Park
Park,
is.
Cullinan's pretty birdie.
Yeah, Cullinan's very birdie.
We did the big sit on April 30th. We got 89 species. Just sitting in one spot right at the top of the tower. 89 species of birds just sitting on top of the tower over the course of the day.
Full marlin. Are they one of those
Purple martin was one of the species. Yes.
kind of attractive? They're
Quick, two quick things. There have been black-eyed Susans. I drive back and forth between here and Fayette County a lot. Black-eyed Susans all up and down the county. I mean, I think a lot of it's the rain. So I know
They're
y'all are
happy
doing a
this
lot of
year.
good work, but I think we got lucky this year. And the
Mother
other
Nature's
thing is,
helping.
that we found on our property, we took just a few acres and disked it because it was just terribly dry after the drought and all this. And we've never had wildflowers on there. And after just disking and the rain, boom, the wildflowers came out. So I think there's a lot that's in the ground. So if you end up with another piece that you haven't been, managing, or may not have flowers seeded on it, you might be surprised if you end up disking. 'Cause
Kelly, I'm glad you brought that up. I actually worked really hard at getting a mini skid steer funded for my park maintenance guys. It has multiple attachments. It's a relatively newer piece of the technology that I did get funded this year, and it comes with a bucket. And one thing I've put in my budget request was a disker for it.
Oh, good.
Me and Fulmer are talking about disking some new areas and seeing if we can increase our wildfire chances disking the areas. So there's a couple puzzle pieces that still need to come together, but the puzzle pieces are coming in. And not only are my staff able to use that equipment for harder jobs in tight areas, and it's just a wonderful piece of equipment. And it's got up to 30 different attachments. Of course, you need to buy those attachments. Well, one of the things I talked to Fleet was, and we got a quote on, was a disker for it. Cool. Thank you. We'll try that out.
How much is that?
So if you want to get numbers a little bit, my Vermeer, which is a very high-end forestry brand piece of equipment, the mini skid steer was $50,000. A lot of that was due to inflation and the popularity of this machine. The disker is around $11,000.
we have a 1960 disc. I don't think costs that much.
We're finding that with the hog damage and things like that, this disker should be able to resolve some of the hog damage.
Exactly.
We're tearing up our tractor, trying to force it to do work that it's not meant to do. We need to, this thing has tracks, so that we will not damage the existing grade while we're trying to do all these projects. Labor is becoming more and more difficult to find. I've lost 2 staff recently to other jobs, and we're having a hard time refilling that. We're hoping that with equipment and technology, we can break some of that cycle up a little bit and work smarter, not harder.
Right.
All right, another big happening was the pump track opening. Same day we did the kite festival this year. This is another project that's been wildly well received. You go out there almost every day, there's 40, 50, not just kids, but people of all ages out there riding it. And so it's been really well received, and kind of following comments online, they're just, people are really enjoying it. They're coming from far away from Sugar Land to come and ride it. So, I mean, Sugar Land's getting a really good reputation as a kind of a go-to place for biking. And there's another thing I'll show on here in a minute, that happened over the weekend. But yeah, it was just a great addition to the park.
Is that you?
Yeah.
You're doing the,
Wow.
That was actually, that's Fulmer on one side, William on the other side.
Oh, really?
That was for the actual, it was kind of cool, because when they actually cut the ribbon, that guy, this is a guy that works for the city, not our department, worked for another department in the city. He's a really good bicyclist. It's not me. It's not me.
Kidding.
And so right as they were cutting the scissors, you can't see it in this picture, but right as they were cutting the scissors, he was flying over right,
Oh,
if you
cool.
like see where they're standing there with this, he was flying over a jump right behind them as they got it, so.
What's he land on?
The other side of the
The other
asphalt,
side of the.
he jumped from one ramp to another.
Yeah, he goes down and down the other, so,
He's
yeah,
very skilled.
yeah.
I would say.
Some of these riders out there, it's pretty amazing what they can do, so.
I did
But-
other ones.
The council members were very happy, that day with the opening.
Well, that city council member on the ride, she rode a bike.
Carol,
She,
Carol,
yeah, she
yeah.
told me she got on a bike and ran.
She didn't do it when we were there.
She didn't go around many times when she did it.
Good.
And then, I know some of y'all attended, the ribbon cutting.
That
This was last month's Parks Board meeting.
Yeah, that's
Park
good.
Board meeting day. So, this was a fun deal. We had a lot of kids out and, this is another project that's been really well received so far, getting the pavilion and playground and you'll see in the middle picture, those are hammock posts with
Yeah.
hammocks that we put in there. Those have been a real attraction too. You see our maintenance staff enjoyed.
They were just-
They're testing them out. They're testing them out.
I couldn't get it off.
So, yeah, and there, we've got a backlog of people already really wanting to use this facility. Like, cause we were there the other day and was it Wharton ISD?
Warden ISD.
Pulled up with about 3 school buses
Oh,
and kind of took
wow.
the thing over.
They
So,
did.
yeah, so
Last
it's
week.
already, people are finding out about it.
Yeah,
And
find
so-
out about it.
Then last week on Wednesday had the grand opening of Go Wave.
Oh,
And
Mhm.
so, had the ribbon cutting that day and a lot of people, again, Carol McCutcheon and other council members got up and went through the course and I think they were the first ones on the course that day. So, so they were out enjoying it and they were really enjoying it and looking forward to going. And then Heather was there. Heather went in and represented the Parks Board and she seemed to enjoy it.
Yeah.
I really recommend it. Everyone who wasn't able to attend that day should definitely try and get out there.
It's not scary that high up or?
It's not, once you're up there, it's
You're cabled
really
in.
fun.
You can't get
It's
back.
fun. It's-
You're harnessed in really
Yeah, you
securely.
are, yeah.
Yeah.
There's no, it's not as scary
It's
as it
not
looks.
scary.
What's security at the harness?
You are harnessed in and then you are harnessed to a cable that is a system that is, and you're tied in the entire time. So the
Oh.
engineering is, you're not just by chance just not falling off.
Right.
You're cabled in with a harness and a rope and a lanyard the entire time.
So there's no going back.
There- It's designed for you not to go back, but you can if you have to.
No, I'm kidding. Oh.
Yeah, it's really a course and a route that you take.
Very
But
cool.
yeah, I mean,
There are
there's
multiple routes. So there's multiple people who can do different routes, so everybody is interacting with each other. It's really was actually better than I expected it.
Yeah.
How high is it?
Different levels or different heights.
1 story, 2 stories?
You
There
were
was
way out
zip
there.
line,
Oh, wow.
So
Yeah, they're
we have the longest zip line in Texas.
Oh, wow.
And the longest zip line in Go Ape in the USA, 1,000 feet back. So once you get across the lake, North Lake, and come back, it's 1,000-footer back. It took me a minute because I recorded it on my phone. A minute. That's a lot of seconds on a zip line.
Yeah.
To get back, it's 1,000 feet. And then how high? I was as low to the ground as just 1 story and I was as high as the ground as 4 or 5 stories.
Yeah,
Wow.
those told the
4
the long
stories?
zip line, you were way up.
5 stories.
I
Are
bet
you
you're 5
harnessed
stories
there?
up.
You're harnessed there too. There's
With a
no,
thing around you?
they do not do anything to chance or to your own muscles.
Yeah,
Okay,
you're,
good, 'cause
you've
I
got
didn't know
like,
upper body's
you're
changing.
trapped in across your legs and your
Oh, good.
chest and everything, and then you've got
Yeah,
the cable you're attached to, and then you have the secondary
Oh, good,
cable that
okay.
you're attached to, so, yeah.
it's not all zip lining, as Heather can say, there's a Tarzan lead.
Oh,
If you
yeah.
wanna do something more scary, they have an opportunity for that. too.
Really?
Tarzan lead.
Besides?
Yeah, it's called a Tarzan swing.
The Tarzan swing.
You're actually
Oh.
Swinging from.
Yeah,
It is.
yeah, so you get, off of the cable system and you get harnessed into the Tarzan swing.
A Tarzan.
And there's some slack in it, so you're about maybe 2 stories off the ground. There's some slack in it, Heather did it too. And
Oh, wow.
you drop off the platform about maybe 8 feet where the system catches you and swings you into a giant net.
Oh, my.
It is the craziest thing I've done in a while,
More scary, do the Tarzan.
Oh,
swing.
my
You don't
God.
have-
but you don't have to do the Tarzan. swing.
Yeah.
You not
How
have to do
cool
it.
is that? That sounds like fun.
It's very fun, so
It
follow
was
your friends.
more fun than I expected.
Yeah.
Kids are gonna love it. Everybody's
Yeah,
gonna love
I
it.
think it's
Kids
gonna
are
get
gonna-
popular. More people.
Yes,
Yeah.
and it's much big, like if you've just driven by and looked at it from the road, it's so much bigger back in there. There's so much more back in there. There's
So much more.
Yeah, then it's nestled back in the trees. You're up in the canopy. It's really nice.
Can you buy tickets on the premises? You have to
You
buy them in
can, but it's better to register and sign up in advance.
Go8.com.
Yeah.
I signed up and
Okay.
I keep getting texts.
Yeah.
To remind me to buy tickets.
You're on their,
Yes,
You're on the radar, marketing radar.
Marketing to you hard. Kite Fest, it was a really nice day, good turnout, got kind of hot in the afternoon, but really nice day for most of the day, a lot of people out with kites, good entertainment. Thanks to all of our parks board members that attended and were art judges, I want to say art critics, but art judges. So,
That's always
yeah,
fun.
it was a good time. And about, I think our numbers came back estimated about 10,000 attendees.
10,000.
It's kind of a come and go, activity, so you can come and go, so it never feels super duper crowded, but, you know, over the course of the day, people coming and going, and we do, it's called Place RAI data, so we can get a very exact number based on the cell phone count of people that are there.
Yeah, to add on to the kite thing, I like the time when the guy who flew the highest kite, the police had to come and tell him to bring it down.
Oh, really? Oh.
it was
Yeah.
too hot.
Yeah, it's like,
Too
can you
high.
bring that back into?
Have a-
Well, let's go ahead and
Anyone.
And then we saw
Yeah.
little kites.
Passenger
Yeah, y'all
plane would
saw
run into
Y'all-
it, I guess.
That's right, y'all judged,
The
kites,
tiniest the
kites
biggest
as well
kite,
as the art,
The
that's right.
food.
Oh, y'all did
And the
food too,
chocolate.
okay, oh, yeah. Y'all
It's
got
fun.
the workout that day.
We still want
We
to
were
golf
sweating.
cart.
Okay, so we're still hosting our food truck events. We had this one April 21st at the Plaza, Park Plaza, and as you know, we kind of moved those around. Our next one's in June at Memorial Park. And then we just have different kind of entertainment at these. We had a band at this one. Sometimes we had DJs. And then this past weekend, this was on Saturday and Sunday, and they started setting up on like Thursday or Friday. This was the biggest mountain bike race in Texas. 700 riders competed for the 2 days. And this is the second year they've held it here. And last year it was like 600 riders or close to 600 riders. This year was at 700. And this was like, I guess, by far the biggest that they've hosted in the state. And it's a combination of the Greater Houston Mountain Bike Association, Greater Houston Off-Road Bike Association, GORBA, and then the Fort Bend Mountain Bike Association. So worked really closely with them on reserving the park. They had food trucks out, they had sponsors out, they brought in an extra restroom building and all the kind of everything to put on a big event out there. So really big draw. And so it got really wet on Sunday, and we were kind of afraid they tore up the park, but William went out and checked it yesterday and said, you barely even knew it. There was, 700 or 800 people out there.
Mountain bikers clean up after themselves extremely well. They're very respectful to the parks systems.
Is it little kid in a race?
And we had, there was a kid, there was the kids cup, yeah, and of course for kids too, so yeah. And so
700 registered riders, but many, many more. Because
people
there's
just come
people.
out there. for the sponsors and spectators and family members and that sort of thing. So, yeah, they're telling how many people are actually there. I guess
Several
we-
thousand.
Yeah. So,
They love the new pavilion and the new playground and the new sidewalks and the new landscaping. They loved it and they used every bit of it, every square inch of it.
Quick question. This reminds me of the people who came to ask us about
Yeah.
using the park. Do they, for example, does the mountain bike group have to lease the premises for 2 days, or how does that?
because they're. If you recall, we've had some groups here and requesting the exemption,
Right,
the
right,
fee exemption. They qualify as a Sugarland-based organization with more than 50% of their attendees.
So they're,
Or participants as residents, so they qualify for the exemption.
okay, and what about the Go Aid? Do they lease?
They
Property?
lease and they give us and they pay us on a sliding scale between 4% and 10% of their revenue based on their annual revenue.
Can PMBA still put in a deposit?
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
there's a deposit. They have to put down a deposit. to
And
make
once
sure
we
that
cleared
they
the
don't-
site, which they did an excellent job, then they get it back. But if they didn't, to be respectful to the park, then
They would have to pay.
they'd have to help some of the deposit would have been taken, but it wasn't the case.
Okay.
They cleaned up better than the Wharton High School kids cleaned up, let me tell you that. They didn't clean up very well.
Yeah.
It was right before Go Ape, and I was like, oh.
Yeah, it was like the day right
Yeah.
before, and I was
Call
just
it
that
Byron.
vision.
Byron. Help me. Let's clean this up. Kids like the best.
Yeah.
And then Memorial Day's event that we hold at Memorial Park is coming up. It's always a touching event on Memorial Day, the morning of Memorial Day. And then the flags at half staff until noon, and then the flags go up. So if you're in town and would like to come out, we'll see you on Memorial Day. And then that kind of wraps it up. And you don't have to vote on that.
I have one question, and I don't know if you know the answer, but I was just casting my eyes back on the vein of plants. That we got 232 milkweed plugs from Monarch Watch. Do you know what species they are?
Actually, the reason I was a little bit late, because I had to unpack, I just got
Oh my
them
gosh.
today. They are not the tropical milkweed. I can send you the botanic name.
Oh, I was just curious. I didn't know if it was a mixture, if it was all the same.
Actually, I have never used those species before, so I want to email you and see what you think.
But yeah,
But I just got them today.
cool. Yeah, I'd love to
We're
look.
talking about milkweed,
Milkweed.
Yeah, butterfly
We had-
flower.
whatever.
What kind is it? 232 milkweed plugs from Monarch Watch, donated.
Milkweed
And that's-
plugs.
Little baby.
Nobody plugs.
Is
their
there a
paper.
variety?
Yeah.
Email
is
me,
there-
Okay,
because there's like a bazillion.
I know, but I just didn't know if there's somewhere better than the
There's
others.
so many.
We have the native milkweeds and the swamp milkweeds in the butterfly garden area.
There's lots and lots of different kinds.
But I think the two species that got today are different. I was going to kind of research for that.
Will you tell us what kind that is next time?
Oh, yeah, I can email you like
Please.
tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wanna know,
Yes, sure.
because they attract monarchs.
Yeah.
Oh.
So we
And many
actually
other things.
applied last year through a website and just try the luck. And then last week we got an email saying, hey, we're gonna award you this milkweed.
Congratulations.
Really?
That stuff's expensive.
Just got it today, yes.
That's fun. It's like Christmas.
Yeah.
I know.
Do you want to adjourn?
Yeah, you
Oh,
did.
wow, we adjourned.
I was gonna say something else.
Oh, okay.
Okay, thank you very much. So can I get a motion for adjourn? Joan? Thank you very much. So with that said, meeting adjourned.
Thank you.
Another good meeting.
That's so exciting to see all the.
Yeah, yeah.
For me.